The match, let's head over to the casters for Salt Farmers versus Pen is Out.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Alliance Tournament 15. I'm moderator joined by a slightly saddened Elise Randolph. Pen is out in the red, bringing a double Navy Scorpion, Basilisk, double Ferox, Stork, Harpy, and 3 bombers. Elise, walk down the Salt Farmers.
Alright, Salt Farmers went with a Vulture, Basilisk, Twin Fleet Hurricanes, double Ferox, double Moa, double Caracal team. So a very interesting comp by Salt Farmers here. And, Pen is out. They've been flying, they're flying kind of a similar setup to what Snuff took earlier today, except it looks, honestly, it looks a little bit better with the 2 Navy Scorpions instead of the Rattlesnakes, and the Bombers to deal with drones.
Yeah, I'm really actually interested to see how the bombers will actually fare, given that those Fleet Hurricanes are already, and those Feroxes are presumably rails. Even if they're blaster, they have good projection, especially with null. And I just don't see Manticores and Nemesis surviving to railgun and artillery volleys if synchronized properly. The Fleet Hurricane, though, is a little bit of a wonky choice in the shield setup with the 4 mid slots. One of the problems with bringing a shield Navy battleship core is that the Drake Navy issue isn't nearly as good as the armor variants, and the Fleet Cane just doesn't have the same sort of tank and sustain that the armor battleships, or battle cruisers rather, have.
Yep, so the path to victory here for the Salt Farmers is, as you mentioned, with their already Fleet Hurricanes and their Feroxes and even the rails on the Vulture, they have to shoot through these Manticores and Nemesis. I'd say you shoot the Nemesis first, because this Pen is Out core is actually very, very tanky and hard to break through, as I expect to see cap transfers from the Navy Scorpions and the Ferox and the Basilisk, so they will tinker together. So yeah, Salt Farmers will have to break that pretty early, because the Manticore and the Nemesis, these bombers represent a lot of potential damage.
Yeah, fortunately for Salt Farmers, they've got Caracals, which are more or less the perfect ships to deal with that. However, we are seeing tracking disruption already across the Feroxes, as we're seeing Nemesis getting primaried and painted, trying to reduce the incoming damage from those railguns. Fleet Hurricane already being the primary from Pen is Out. I really like that call from them.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Fleet Hurricane doesn't have a very sturdy tank at all, so if anything, like to break through, it'll probably be easiest to break through this Fleet Hurricane here, and it might be a little bit slow going on, as we see that Nemesis actually going into structure with an arty volley. Oh my goodness, the Pen is Out logistics, piloted by Nate Altol, needs to be on top of his game here, needs to get all the reps on there, and he can't do it. Nemesis goes down first blood to Salt Farmers.
Yeah, Nate was doing a good job at repairing these Manticores and Nemesis' shields, but eventually every arty volley was successively punching through armor, then he'd get fully back up, and then he'd lose a little bit more armor, and then eventually structure, and finally his hull was cracked. But that Fleet Hurricane of Torpolic is taking a good amount of damage into about half shields. Those will be the missiles streaming across the field, and those railguns on the Ferox.
Yep, the Fleet Hurricane, this is a very slow and methodical team that the Pen is Outside have. They don't care about losing a bomber. They'll probably lose another bomber, maybe 2, but they'll eventually hope to crack through this Fleet Hurricane. This Fleet Hurricane needs to start running away a little bit. These Scorpions can hit from basically everywhere in the arena, but the bombers can't really. So, maybe getting a little bit of range is kind of the play here.
Yeah, as Elise was alluding to, these are actually cruise missiles we're seeing fit to the Navy Scorpions, not the rapid heavy variant. And they need to really be dropping more Manticores in exchange for the shields of this Fleet Hurricane. If they drop those Manticores, they represent roughly about 400 to 500 damage each at the bare minimum. And that Hurricane is already dropping into low armor, as Salt Farmers is trying to switch off to the Basilisk, realizing that the Manticores weren't quite working out for them as a primary target.
All right, Vorfalak in the Hurricane is actually going down here. Very slow and painful death from him. The entire Salt Farmers team is just slowly moving. It doesn't look like any of them really are using their prop mods at all. And Vorfalak is actually going to die here under full reps, including rep bots and as Basilisk. That just goes to show you the amount of damage that this Pen is Out team can just do. It's not burst damage, it's just slow and steady applied damage. And now that Pen is Out has that Fleet Hurricane down, I think both their Manticores are now safe. I don't think the Salt Farmer side had any combined alpha or have enough combined alpha to take down this Manticore. And they certainly, I don't think they can break this Basilisk either.
Yeah, that Basilisk we can see is actually getting remote cap transfers from his Navy Scorpion. So, as you've alluded to, Salt Farmers, we can see how low their attack bar is compared to Pen is Out. They're definitely not applying that damage, and Vultures and Feroxes are the absolute worst ships you could possibly have, shooting at the extremely high kinetic and thermal resist that the Basilisk will be having. Something like, say, a Navy Harbinger or anything that's not kinetic and thermal damage would do an excellent work towards that, but I don't see any way for Salt Farmers to break through Pen is Out.
Yeah, Salt Farmers, they didn't really expect to see a setup like this. I don't think they were hoping for more. I don't know what they were really hoping for, to be honest. They were hoping to just burst through some small ships, but not really going against something like a Tinker. Interestingly enough, Salt Farmers did ban the Guardian and Oneros, trying to make sure that the Pen is Outside can't bring the flag Balgorn. So that's a pretty good and heads-up ban on that. But instead, they got this super durable Tinker with the Navy Scorpion Basilisk Ferox.
Yeah, this is a really similar core to compositions we've seen in the past. Sometimes we'd see in the Tana swapped out for that, but Nadatol doing a good job so far, not being stressed too particularly hard, but eventually these missiles have dropped Terrorizer, and Pen is Out so far has actually been terrorizing this upper bracket. Well played by them so far, as they're just going to be picking through now the Ferox of Demolay and Dwarren.
Yep, and I believe Pen is Out will now get to face, assuming this goes through, they will have to face the Initiative, I believe. They will have to face the Initiative, who just slayed Pandemic Legion in our previous match, so they've got their work cut out for them. But it should be pretty good here. As you saw, it's very slow, it's very methodical, but that is what this Pen is Out team is meant to be. They're just going through everything. They're breaking through the Basilisk reps. They know that with their bombers and their Navy Scorpions, they have enough DPS to break battlecruiser hulls. These bombers, this is what the Snuffed Out team was missing before. Snuffed Out team had no bombers and they had very little DPS. With these bombers, they can shoot these battlecruiser hulls very well, and just great heads-up play from the Pen is Outside. They see that no battlecruisers were banned in this match, and they say, you know what, we're going to take this durable comp that can beat everything that is in front of us. And they took it, and it looks great.
So, interestingly enough, we see Kentrell in his Harpy on top of the Salt Farmers core, and not actually having any sort of a scram or a web on anything. It looks like he's just a full tank setup that you would kind of expect in more or less of a Tinker composition, just going around and shooting the rep drones that were on top of the Salt Farmers side.
Yeah, that's why these second ships seem to have died much faster. These battlecruiser hulls, they do have a drone bay, which you kind of utilize a lot for their rep drones, and because the Pen is Outside, their support wing have just been killing rep drones this entire time. Vorphalek took like 3 minutes to die, and then Terrorizer took like 45 seconds because they're just that much fewer reps on the field. And just see another Caracal die. Just slow, methodical approach. Really good display from Pen is Out. Doesn't seem to be pressured at all. And Salt Farmers, just nothing they could really do here. They did the best they could, shooting that Nemesis down, getting him down. But the Manticores proved a little bit too tanky.
Yeah, that means that no matter how the next match plays out, we know that, or between Pen is Out and Initiative, one of those two teams will be top 4 winners side. Something that I don't think anyone would have predicted, but both teams definitely showing why they've earned that respect from not just us and the commentators, but everyone watching this match live on EventT.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good display from them. Really just a good understanding, a firm understanding of the meta and how it plays out. They know what they can get away with. They know that they can't bring the same setups they took in week 1. They have to take something, a little bit different, and they took it. This Pen is Outside, this team, I really like it. It's not going to be the last Tinker we see, I can guarantee you that. But this is one of the better Tinkers out there.
Yeah, I mean, really the only way you can make this better is, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, going from the Basilisk to the Atana. You get an extra mid slot and a low slot, but the Basilisk is definitely more than adequate for the composition they're bringing, and it's possible that Penazout just don't have the sort of financial backing in order to afford an Atana, which these days is costing around tournament season probably anywhere from 160 to upwards of 200 billion ISK right now. Speaking of Basilisk, though, Sheena Mine in Salt Farmers has just now dropped. Penazout just cleaning up the remaining Vulture and pair of Moas we have left on the field.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's going on. And, one of the weaknesses of the Tinker is something that a lot of teams have an answer for, which is the Flag Balgorn, Armageddon, Curse, these really durable looting platforms. But you know what? Salt Farmers managed to ban out the Guardian Oneros, which indicated that they couldn't bring any of those ships. So, really opened up for Penazout to take this. A really cheeky play. I really like this pick here, and I like this call. Very, very heads up, thinking on their feet. It's not just like a premeditated, we're definitely taking a Tinker. They reacted to the bans, and it just went really well in their favor. I gotta assume that they also have a way to deal with any drone spam that they might have seen. These bombers are very good at dealing with that. Launch a bomb when the drones start coming in, and a lot of the times they die.
Yeah, I mean, Penazout having good presence of mind, like you were mentioning. One of the things that the desk was mentioning before they threw to us was that Salt Farmers didn't have a flagship. I'm not sure if that's because they didn't elect to bring to select one going into the tournament, or if because theirs had died, but we knew that that wasn't an option for them, and I'm certain that Penazout also knew that. So not having to fear some sort of a Balgorn flagship meant that going for this Tinker composition was a very safe pick going into the match, and good showing throughout. The Vulture will die with about 10 seconds remaining on the clock. The Moa will likely survive, but well played by them. Any last words, Elise?
I just gotta say, Penazout doing really well here. I like that they left one guy alive to tell the tale, so they can never forget the Salt Farmer side what just happened here. A really good showing. Penazout win decisively, 96-3. We're gonna send it back to the boys in the studio.
EVE Dublin returns this October 20th and 21st. For tickets and more details, please visit www.evedublin.com.
Hey guys, welcome back. Pen is out there winning handily with a pseudo Tinker, or Jintan has decided they're going to be called Neo Tinkers because he thinks the pseudo Tinker name is wrong. Why don't you explain to us the concept of a pseudo or Neo Tinker, why it is not the original Tinker?
So the reason the original Tinker was based around the Tech 3, and the reason we call these pseudo or Neo Tinkers, I'm just going to say pseudo Tinker because that's what all the commentators are going to say, and there's no way we can relearn a term that quickly, is because instead of using a Tech 3 for the same principle, which is getting fed a ton of cap from your fleet members and then dishing out as many reps as possible. The reason why we use a Basilisk with this now is because it can fit 6 shield reps instead of the normal 4 and 2 which you would see in Tranquility to cap chain. And that just means you can give out the maximum possible reps to your team if you are able to get fed enough cap, and then you can also run an extra large shield booster and be nice and tanky.
Yeah. And run it consistently rather than you run out of charges and then you're eating tons and tons and tons of cap for extra boosts. Suetonio, what are your thoughts on running a pseudo Tinker versus running a regular shield Logi? Obviously, on paper, the Pseudo-Tinker seems like it's obviously better in every way than a regular T2 Logi, but you do have to commit to having at least 2, preferably BC or higher ships sat next to your Logi the entire fight, feeding it cap. What are your thoughts on that as a comp?
Yeah, you're definitely, the thing with the Pseudo-Tinker is you're trading mobility for max sustain. So you can run that extra large shield booster the entire time, so you have really high sustain on logistics instead of like a typical nano scimitar, which is only going to have an extra ISP, has a limited amount of charges. Of course, those basilisks, and in this case the two rattlesnakes, are sat at 0. They're not really moving too far. They can't move really around, so they can't really apply pressure to other ships. They can't use their grapplers or newts if modules they would have had otherwise. And also they could be in trouble if they face something like double Vindicator that can just come in and just burst through those reps. It's also much easier, for example, for bombers to just bomb the rep bots on them because it's a stationary target. It's much easier just to get that bomb in there.
Yeah. So if we can return, before we look at the next match, briefly to the idea of this tournament being the tournament of giant killers. We've seen Hydra fall in the first round, PL fall just now in the third round. What that does to the brackets is actually quite interesting. The losers bracket match, which is Slice versus Templis. If Templis beat Slice, they will face PL, giving Templis the chance to do something I don't think any other team has done before, is to beat PL and Hydra in a single tournament. I'm not even sure how many teams have taken games off of PL and Hydra at any point in their history. If that list exists, it's probably very small. Maybe Hun, maybe Ronin even would possibly be members of that group. However, if PL beat Templis or Slice, the winner of that match, and Hydra win their next losers bracket match, we will have Pandemic Legion versus Hydra, a match we'd expect to see final weekend coming down so early in the losers bracket. However, we must look forward to the next match as it is only 5 minutes away. We have Volta going up against A Band Apart. I know Ithaca is a member of the Volta team in the corridor being quite nervous there. Volta have a flag Balgorn prepped and ready to go. The A Band Apart have a flag Armageddon prepped and ready to go. So we can see kind of, hopefully, maybe those two flagships face off each other and how they would interact in a practical setting. Volta so far have beaten Permal Helmeted Warriors and Quebec United Legion. A Band Apart have beaten Slice and Hard Knock Citizens. Now, based purely on those teams they've beaten, Jintan, talk to me a little bit about what you expect from Volta and Band Apart.
Well, talking just about the type of teams they've beaten, I think ABBA would be considered the stronger team. Hard Knocks have done very well, and ABBA very handily defeated them, showing some real strong piloting with that drone all-in that they brought, whereas Volta have similarly just executed incredibly well against their teams. They just have faced a slightly lesser tier of opponent.
Yeah, so we have the vote winner from Pen is Out versus Salt Farmers. That is Sayu M, S-A-Y-U, capital M's. Congratulations on your billion ISK there. And as we move into this next match, Suetonio, I'll tell you the bans, and if you can give me your thoughts on those. We have the bans for the match being, here we go, Volta have banned a Vindicator and a Brutix Navy issue, banning hard into those rush setups based on hull, also banning into partially the NBC core. So pretty interesting bans there. And then ABA, very interesting bans here, Scimitar and Rabisu. What are your thoughts?
Well, we know Volta are a team that have consistently placed in high places in the tournament. They definitely have access to Rabisu. They could be planning on bringing it alongside a flagship Balgon. Maybe they read that from the Vindicator ban. Obviously, you don't want to bring your flag Balgon at 0 and then be next to 2 Vindicators.
Yeah. So that could be a signal then that they're planning on bringing that flag bell, which may in turn mean that ABA want to bring, I don't know, they're getting in a range to try and do that long range newt war, which you might be able to do. I've always heard it theorized that a Flaggeddon versus a flag bell, the Flaggeddon can kite newt the bell down to nothing, but I've never seen it done. I've never seen it applied. Maybe it can happen. We do have a graph ready to go of a comparison of the faction battle cruisers and the faction ships in general coming through here. We have the Brutix Navy, the Harb Navy coming through as no surprise to anyone. We've seen so many NBC cores thus far this tournament, both of them clocking in at a similar ratio of wins. Vexor Navy issue as well coming in. Fantastic drone boat. Suetonio, you've been saying all tournament how the Vexor Navy really is a linchpin of that drone comp, as it is provides such a value for what it does. And then the Hurricane fleet issue as that additional Navy battlecruiser that you can bring in the NBC core if a NBC is banned and you want to replace it that way, or you can bring it in a more fly killer setup that we were discussing earlier today with Arties. It's also got 2 utility slots, which means you can fit 2 links rather than the 1 if you give it that co-proc. Moving further down, we have the Megathron Navy issue, which honestly I find quite surprising over the Vindicator. We've seen Megathron Navy chosen over Vindy on many, many occasions, even though it's a point more. Then after that, we've got the TFI, throwback to past tournaments. Then Osprey Navy, part of the Rapid Light Corps. Scorpion Navy, we've only really just started seeing today as a variant on the Rattlesnake. Possibly not quite as strong as the Rattlesnake, but 2 points less, still a very, very strong tournament ship we've seen historically. A good choice for flagship we've seen historically as well. Then the Drake Navy issue is not a good ship. The Augur Navy issue being... I am a big fan of the Augur Navy issue. It's very fast. A lot of people don't expect it. It's very high HP, very tanky. Raven Navy is also not a good ship. And then the Vigil Fleet issue at 1 pick and 1 win, though, interestingly enough. However, we are approaching the game, so we're going to hand it over to the casters for the match coming up. It is going to be We Form Volta versus A Band Apart.